listen with me as I present to you a narrative, a visual narrative. So I'm going to tell a story. Some of you are familiar with parts of it because it's ongoing from the last 10 years, really, this research has been, as I've been researching across cultures and across practice, but I've been coming at it from a very different position, and that is of a nurse educator. And one of the things I do is I travel around the world decolonizing nurse education, which can be pretty bloody sometimes. Okay, and you say, what is this colonizing? Well, the knowledge that exists within cultures and societies is tremendous. It's from a way back, it's in storytelling, it's in dance, it's in music, it's in culture. And this is the knowing and knowledge of the race, of the history and everything. Okay? Now, in medicine, the westernization and colonization of medical care, in global medical care, global citizen, global medicine, is controlled by the World Bank. Okay? And they'll go in, as you'll see, into different cultures and different forms of education, and they'll say, yes, you have to reform your education system because you're primitive, you don't have good health, you don't have whatever. They bring in expensive machines, they bring in expensive technology, and then they don't have the educational system in place that's relevant to the culture of the people that they're supposedly providing the healthcare for. So it's a little bit different from what normally people talk about in BERA, because I'm coming at it as an educator, so my PhD is education. My profession is nursing, and as you can see from my cross-dressing silk robes, I'm a Buddhist monk in Japan. And my speciality is hospice care. So I'm going to take three examples as well as we move through, as I explain to you, bring you into my journey as I go into China, as I go into Japan, as I go around Asian countries, developing curriculum and trying to find out where the indigenous forms of knowing and knowledge can be wrapped up, identified, and put into academic speak, like a learning outcome, which you have to have, even though you don't like it, you still have to have it. But how can we still protect the knowing and knowledge by still using educational paradigms? Okay, so I'm going to use pictures. I'd like you to pay a little bit of attention to the holistic feeling that you're getting from the narrative. Is that okay? You can still listen to my sweet voice twittering in the background, but I'd very much like you to pay attention to the visual narrative. Okay. So, can anybody hear anything? Okay, good. I'm using sound and visuals because it uses different parts of the brain. The educationalists amongst you will probably know you have a cognitive side, so they say two-brain theory, which I don't agree with. I believe we have a holistic brain, and we fire off in different points. In fact, if you put the brain under an fMRI scanner, and you ask somebody a cognitive question, the whole brain flashes. And if you give someone an emotion to see, the whole brain flashes. So they're now coming off into the holographic theory of the memory. Where is the memory? Where is the mind? And we're educators, we can't answer that question. And I find that exciting. So I'm here talking to you today because I don't know. Does that make sense to you? I'm here because the fact that I don't know gives me the space to put in new knowledge, new questions that come from you. Because if I was standing here saying I know, then I'm not listening. I hope that makes sense to you, because it's a very Buddhist perspective. I believe we are global citizens. No matter where we are on the planet, we are global citizens. Yes, we can be national citizens. Yes, we can have national values, but we still live in a global community. What does that mean? Hopefully, we'll have some ideas as we move forward through this. I'm going to talk about values in action, and this paper was co-written through conversations I had in Beijing. I've been teaching in Beijing in the School of Medicine for 5 years now, and I work in the Faculty of Nursing, looking at the curriculum, and I will show you some pictures later on which will show you how something gets picked up medically from the American Nursing Association and gets dumped into the culture. as this is the way it's done. And you'll see some of the problems that can cause. My colleague, Dean Howe, she's the Dean of the faculty, can't get here for a variety of reasons at the moment, because our paper is from Japan, and she's from China, and as you know, China and Japanese have a few problems at the moment. The title of the paper is Inclusive Education Across Borders. How do we prevent educational design and nursing curriculum from colonizing indigenous forms of knowing? I disagree with you slightly in your last thing, and where you said it doesn't go across cultures. I believe inclusive education and values can go across borders and can go across very well and very easily, as long as you don't go from a position of I know, and I'm the boss, and I am the power of the education. Then it can slip across cultures very, very easily. In some cases too easily, which is another issue, because as it goes across into some cultures, other cultures don't like being diluted. Values are important. I'm presenting my values to you today from a sense of vulnerability. You have to be vulnerable if you want to be a global educator. You have to be able to say, this is me as I understand me. You don't have to make excuses for who you are and what you are. You just have to say to people, this is what I am. And then they can take it or leave it, basically. So in any story, it's important that you get an understanding about me, my sense of my values that I'm carrying, that I use for my judgments. Okay? I have a great thing, because Jack was my supervisor, and he said, Chikan, you've made a mistake. I said, stop there. Buddhists do not make mistakes. What do you mean Buddhists don't? So what? We don't. We have learning experiences that we can revisit. So, that's one of my values, wasn't it, Jack?
It
no, I don't make a mistake.
Yes.
He just says to me, Jikan, you're revisiting again. These are my values from teaching in Dubai. Teaching nurses in Dubai in an Islamic context, being a Buddhist monk. Wow! What a disastrous recipe that could be. Because the Islamic nursing curriculum doesn't exist. Yet they've been nursing for thousands of years, so why can the West say it doesn't exist? Because it's different, because they cover up their hands down to here and they wear veils, doesn't mean it's not nursing. And there's all sorts of cultural things that they can do. For example, they can't do night duty. They're not allowed to do night duty because they have to be at home with the male of the house locking the keys to the door and everything else. It doesn't matter what you think, that's their culture. So therefore you can't go in and say, I'm going to design this really super duper Western culture and this is how you're going to do it, if it's not suitable to the cultural beliefs. It creates terrible problems with the context. So I believe in creating spaces and the time to listen. Because we don't listen, we're not good listeners. And I was amazed when you said that, about the teachers were surprised they can listen to the students, as we say students, we're in higher education, but I believe we co-create knowledge in the lesson. So we have lesson outcomes from the formal curriculum, and we have the hidden curriculum, which we were talking about earlier on, and we have the new curriculum that we generate through the interaction of our listening, our evaluating, and seeing the teacher in higher education. I believe I'm an asset to my students. They have to use me as a part of their learning tool. And I got into trouble in Japan when I first got there. I'm always in trouble, actually. But I got into quite serious trouble in Japan when I first got there because a student complained about me, and it was taken very seriously as part of the marginalization process of being a foreigner, that I was accused of not teaching. And I said, you're quite right. I'm not teaching. I'm not teaching the student. It's not my job to teach. It's my job to help that student learn, not to teach. In Japan, it's banking education, fresh stuff. This is the student, goes in, press the button, comes out, it's an exam, pass, no knowledge, just memory. Okay? Flexibility in terms of global teaching and the global citizen. First of all, the global citizen has to have consciousness that they are part of a bigger whole. And secondly, you have to be able to let go of what you think are your values. That sounds probably like a difficult thing to say. Let's take the classrooms. Usually teachers have got to think about being the power in the classroom. I think I'm not the power in the classroom. The responsibility of what happens in my classroom is mine, and only mine. Okay? So, but how my students and I engage with reaching the knowledge that's required of my students is a different process. A little bit letting go of the students, giving them the authority and permission to be independent studiers, and lifting up the fact that they can generate knowledge, that they don't have to be empty vessels, and they can tell their own stories of learning. This is aspects of me and aspects of my life and my work, because each of us is here with a different story. We came to this room today at this time with different values, different ideas, different culture, different sexes. But all these different elements of where I am in my teaching in Dubai, in this particular case, they are what make up me, or as I understand me, being a transient state. I change, I'm changing all the time. Does that make sense to you? You don't have to agree at all. Values are not just abstract or theoretical concepts. Values are lived standards that we hold as life-affirming steps, each one which requires reflection, practice, evaluation, and modification. This is all shown stuff. Nurses do this all the time. We see a problem, we reflect on the problem, we find a solution in action. We don't rush off and try and figure out where the book is with the theory. But if it's a serious problem, you can, because you know, because you've done the research and you're up to date on your publications, you know what the latest treatment is. But usually nurses and teachers deal with a problem in the classroom, in action, on action. Correct? You're looking at me a bit shocked, madam.
No, do I agree?
Well, so it's going to be a lively debate towards the end. Good. Okay, this is another aspect of me in China. Now, I'd like you to look at the next photographs coming up. What do you see? Nice white uniforms, nursey type images with bands across the hat. This one here, which I'm going to talk about a bit later. You see the classroom sizes are huge. You see them taking on the lamp from Florence Nightingale. Yeah? You see they're all trained for the military, which is part of Chinese education. The learning methods in the classroom are not what I've just been talking about. The learning methods in the classroom are chalk and talk, because they're so limited on resources. And nursing in China only came about in 1956 as a profession after the revolution, because there was no training of nurses at all in China. So our values can be different or appear to be the same. We need compassionate listening, which is required to give us a sense of othering. By othering, it means that I see you, Ubuntu. If I said that correctly, the South African Ubuntu. I am because you are. And in Buddhism, we don't think we exist. I exist in this room because there's 7 reflections of me. So the 7 reflections of me give me an understanding about how maybe I am. But I don't really know, because I can't really see myself as I am. Is that okay? If you want to talk about it, we can do it in 5 more minutes. Global citizens need to develop skilled communications abilities. We have to be very skilled. And global citizenship is something we acquire over time, I believe. Sometimes we're not very good at it. I want to talk about this picture because when you look at it, it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. I think there's a soft... This is the power, the head nurse. Okay. This is a more middle line nurse, and this is a nurse who's just taken a promise, and they do that. They hold up their hands and they take a promise to Florence Nightingale. Yeah, they promised Florence that they will carry the lamp, the light of nursing. Okay, which is a beautiful picture. Beautiful picture. Now, you have to remind yourself that this is China, okay? And here we have these women really serious about taking Florence Nightingale's knowledge and Florence Nightingale lamp on to the next generation, okay? They have a 5,000-year history of traditional Chinese medicine. It's totally ignored. Totally ignored. This is colonization. Active, aggressive colonization. Dressed up in ceremony, backed by power. Agree? Disagree? It's got nothing to do with their culture, this brand of nursing, because it's based on Chinese medicine. It's based on acupuncture, needles, it's based on herbal therapies, it's based on a system that sees the body completely different to the West. The liver has a different function than the West says. So this has no place in modern China as it stands. Why couldn't they be teaching Chinese nurses traditional Chinese nursing? It's colonization. And you might not think that's important, but when I was in Beijing last year, 4 serious attacks took place in the hospitals where the doctors had their throats cut by patients because the Western medicine that's been advertised in China as being the be-all and end-all, the cure, and it's so expensive, people become broke just paying for the medicine. And then the relative dies, or the operation doesn't work, and the people have got debt and they're angry. So the system's in conflict. The promising, the merchandising, the colonization is non-equal as it goes across. It's big business medicine. All contexts have their own knowledge. All countries have their own history, their stories. All countries' education is under pressure of some degree or another. The classroom, the types of methodologies you use to stimulate your students to learn. How do we examine? What methods do we use? How much or how many of us actually research the classroom? In Japan, that's all I do, I research classrooms. But my university does not consider that research. So I can't get funded. So, okay, I can't get funded. I don't need a lot of money to research my own classroom. Okay. I use the internet, I put my class on the internet, I test the different types of knowing and knowledge and curriculum by using the free access to the internet. You don't have to have lots of money, I haven't had it. Okay? Our context shapes how our inner understands and acts and reacts with other outer realities. So my inner world can be deeply frustrated at times, even though I'm supposed to be a monk. I still become deeply frustrated as I'm a foreigner, and in Japanese, it means I'm called a Bakatari Hanagaijin, which is a stupid, round-eyed foreigner. Okay? I'm never going to be Japanese, ever. Even I speak beautiful Japanese, and I adopt the culture and do everything. I build Japanese. I've got a Japanese home, temple, and Japanese content, but I'm still a foreigner. I will always be a foreigner. I've got white skin. Yeah? So I'm never going to be accepted. Do I want to be? Or is acceptance so necessary to our existence that we have to have approval from people? Well, yeah, it's important sometimes. It's important that your teacher will turn around to you, or your line manager will turn around to you, or your professor will turn around and say, well done, good job. It's never been said to me in 13 years of teaching in Japan. Never, not once. Okay? Because they can't say it. They just can't say it. The social context is very, very important to the global citizen, because socialization, Vygotski's stuff, is a big filter. You have to be able to ask the question that was said earlier on, who am I? Am I really me, or am I somebody else's somebody? Where does my anger come from? Okay? I used to be a soldier, you see, but I got better and became a monk. I'm now going to show you my work. You can bring science and intuition and love and compassion together. This is a hospice that we're working in Thailand. There's no doctors, no nurses. It's an end-of-life hospice for cancer, terminal cancers. So what we were doing was using science. We were taking the saliva from the body, measuring the saliva, which showed the reaction between teaching people meditation and teaching people touch. Because touch is an important element, and very few people research touching. But you touch in the classroom. You touch with your eyes. You touch with your voice. You touch with your body language. You touch me. So I developed a system and thought that, well, if when you're born, somebody catches you. Okay? When you die, why can't you be held? So this is what we do. Remember, this hospice that I'm talking about here has no money, no drugs. There's no way of stopping the pain unless you're using the research and you're using super points. We teach people to breathe into pain. It's a different form, a different world, a different context. I believe this is global nursing, global working that we're doing here. Because when somebody dies, the final thing that you bring to that person is you. No drugs, no intervention, nothing, just you. And they pass away peacefully in your arms. How do we communicate across cultures, inclusionally? First of all, carefully. We have to be very careful. We have to go in very softly, very gently. We don't go in as the power. I always go in and say, hey, I'm learning here. You're teaching me. You're telling me your story. Tell me why you want to do what you want to do. Tell me what you need to do. You need transparency. You've got to be transparent, because if people look at you and say, hey, where you come from? I don't trust what I'm seeing. I don't trust what I'm feeling. If they think there's any form of deceit there, you can go into any culture and be you, as long as you live the value of you. Don't try and hide it. Okay? Compassionately caring. Do you understand what I mean by compassionately caring? Not to judge, but to see the good in the person. And we see some terrible things going on in our lives in education in other countries. But people are reacting to their context, reacting to the fact they have to survive. They've got to feed their children, feed their families. There's all sorts of reasons why good people do bad things. All sorts of reasons, including academics. I felt safer on a battlefield in the British Army than I did in a classroom in a faculty of nursing. You know, because at least on the battlefield I knew who my enemy was. Well, this is education, isn't it? The paradigm wars. Yeah, they're alive and well, believe you me. The fourth point, and I think it's the most important, taking responsibility and acting with flexibility. Taking responsibility for your actions, your words, your manner, how you behave, what you gift to other people in terms of your experience, and being flexible and allowing them to reject you. That's the secret. Don't be attached to what you're trying to give. You can't heal the world. You can do your best to inform, you can do your best to bring people on, you can do your best and push them up to reach their potential that you can see in them, but you should never ever be attached. And don't get angry and sad when they don't reach what you feel they can reach, because they're reaching what they think that they can reach. Yeah. In Buddhism we say, everything is as it should be in the moment. That's another nice saying, eh? I'm not going to make a mistake. I'm going to finish there, so it's now question times for you. I've enjoyed inviting you through pictures into my complex life, okay, which doesn't continue. So action research, in terms of living action research, has no line in the sand that says this is before, this is after, because of the cycles that you go through. And these cycles are not always linear. It's very sort of mustakas. You can sort of be praying or washing up the dishes, and then enlightenment will just bubble up in the moment. Ooh, got the point there. So, thank you. Any questions? Yes, I
have two, actually.
Oh, good. Can I sit down for that?
You might need to.
seen some of them
I'm
before.
joking. To what extent are the methods that you were using in the Thai hospice indigenous to the Thai culture?
Yeah, the Thai culture's got a form of touch massage that they use, Thai massage.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they use meridian lines similar to the Chinese. In fact, the theory is that a lot of the Chinese medicine came through down into Thailand a long, long time ago, but they'll put their elbows and move the joints around in the same way. Very similar, so they're very open to it. And the second thing is Buddhism. They're a Buddhist culture. So they're very open to Buddhist teachings of love, care, and compassion, looking after each other, taking off evil, this kind of thing.
Although Thailand, of course, has other religious
many
denominations as well, doesn't
yes,
it?
Yes, yes.
And is the hospice purely Buddhist?
No, it's not. It's not. It's all sorts come. We get them from Laos and all the different tribal people come actually because they don't have access to Western medicine in the hospitals because they're the indigenous workers. Some have got no nationality, they're between countries, so they've got no health care. So they come. It's open to everybody.
Okay. My other question is, why do the Japanese employ you? You sound like you're a thorn in their side.
I have been. They've been trying to get rid of me for about 10 years, but unfortunately, I had a contract that said you're tenured. I was employed in Japan to design a new curriculum for nursing in terms of medicine, complementary medicine, alternative medicine, Chinese medicine. And the professor that introduced me, because in Japan you have to be introduced. Doesn't matter if you've got a doctorate or not, if you're introduced, you're fine. So, and then you have to get permission from the Ministry of Education to do the work. And so I've got a master's level permission to do that work. Nobody else has. So that's why they keep me there. I have tried to leave, believe you me. But as Jack keeps saying, if you stay in there, even if it's toxic, you're holding the space. And if I look at the figures, when I think about the space, I've trained 1,000 nurses in 10 years in holistic touch. And we then had the chance to go out and train the community in community education, health promotion education. So even though I personally don't like being where I am, I'm a Buddhist, I serve. And Jack reminds me that I'm serving quite well. Good question. Ouch. Yes, honey.
Your presentation was very different from what I expected.
Probably.
And so much better than I expected.
That was a sort of, that was a nice slap around the head.
No,
I didn't expect much from you anyway.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the opposite of that. It's the best presentation I have heard in academia. In the sense that I think it came truly from the heart. It wasn't full of the words that we code everything with. It was a very true expression of what you believe in, and it touched me very personally because it's what I think it's very much what I'm trying to do with children. My work is located in working with children with social and emotional behavioural difficulties. I'm not asking a question here, I'm just sharing something with you. And my starting point was something very similar to you, which was to ask myself the question, what makes me me? That's my starting point. And I came to the same conclusion as you did. It was very much about my values, my beliefs, what motivated me. And that's what I try to share with children. And the focus of my approach is about helping them. It's not about inculcating values, it's about helping to promote their self-growth through helping them to come to understand who they are. And through doing that, helping them to begin to understand others as well, so that they begin to form a better sense of themselves and themselves in relation to others. So my work is fundamentally about that. And I think another concept I find very valuable is Kan Adler-Collins' work.
Yes,
when he talks about unconditional positive regard. And I think that's very similar to what you were talking about in terms of compassion. And it's with seeing the good in people. They don't have to prove themselves in order to, and it's looking for the good in the child and trying to support that good in the child. And that's fundamentally, as I said, what the work is about. And it's not always an easy journey because sometimes by the time you reach out to these children are already quite damaged. But fundamentally that's what I'm trying to do. So therefore, I think I couldn't agree more with you. I think transparency and honesty are at the heart of everything that you should do, because without that you're nothing. And taking responsibility, these are things that ultimately we're trying to achieve for the children. And I think it's very, very important as adults mediating that you actually model these things in yourself. Because if you're not doing that, then how can you hope to influence children? So, as I said, it's not a question, it's just an observation that I think that's, I don't think I'm doing it nearly as well as you are.
No,
But it's what I'm trying.
I'm not doing it well.
But it's fundamentally, because I came to realise that if you're trying to help children, and if you're trying to, to help them in terms of their behaviour, the starting point, it's not about rewards, it's not about sanctions, it's children coming to realise that they want to be that way, that they care about others, empathy, and it's a bit intrinsic, it's coming from the child, and I would see our role as adults as fostering that growth.
Is it possible just to ask, it's just a question in terms of when you were affected by Kan's presentation, and it's related to what I was just asking Joanne earlier really, which is, if we look at Kan's slide, and it's got there compassionately caring. Now, I can take meanings from those words, but I hadn't seen those slides before, where Kan is working in the Thai hospice and actually holding people who are dying. And we've got Kan on video as he was authentically expressing, and that is what I think touched you as it did me. So I'm just curious about whether, I'll post this onto YouTube and then link it in with Kan's slides, so you'll be able to access it on Monday from this. If you just remember actionresearch.net, that's where it'll be on Monday. Yeah, but I'm just curious about the sense of authenticity that I think you were experiencing with Kan, the images of Kan actually in an embodied way expressing what he's meaning by compassionately caring. But the words don't carry, you need the words, but they don't carry, if you like, sufficient meaning. And I'm just curious about the notion of the visual narrative that Kan is now able to communicate, his meanings.
Well, I think it's about context. It's about, I think it can also communicate it verbally and contextualise things the way that I've tried to do. But I think, I think images, as you said, images and words, the combination, and music as well, because I'm a music teacher, all of these things strengthen.
The symposium, the next one we're going to, takes another look at knowing in knowledge, and whose knowing in knowledge is it anyway. One of the things that I contribute on the next one is the fact that I'm an editor of a journal, and all of us have to get published. Yes, you may be in academic journals, but I have to get published in academic journals and nursing journals. And our journal represents 135 countries. It's the International Council of Nurses. So most of the data that's given into us is just rubbish. It's westernized theories of people in countries that don't know what they're talking about anyway. So we've been fighting about why can't we have visual narratives? Why can't we have multimedia accounts of practice and praxis in a country, in a culture that's just equally as valuable as a paper in the same journal. And we did the first one in Melbourne a few months ago. We did the first one there and examined that process as part of the symposium. So there is a lot of good educators around that are frustrated, and I need help, very much help, with schools, volunteers. If you want to do multimedia accounts and you want to show different forms of knowledge, South Africa, for instance, which is what our first multimedia was. It was the AIDS pandemic. Please keep in touch. Greece would be good. How do you survive the Euro bust? What a multimedia account that would. They could be dancing away, drinking with some Baku, saying we're all fine. Sorry.
Palgrave Macmillan have got a new monograph called Pivot, and they will publish multimedia. Yeah, as a part, and there are a number of journals.
Not in nursing.
Not in nursing. You make your way through a methodology journal. Yeah.
It's something we've never thought of doing.
One really lovely thing that I got from your talk, apart from the multimedia, I'm sure it was the multimedia with the chanting behind, I'm thinking Aboriginal and desert space.
Yeah.
And it gave me the mental space to think about Julianne and Roger's problem of what are we doing here? And I know that in special schools we're all there to make the quality of life of the young people really good, and we try to skill them, and we should really take a pride in that, you know, that yes, that is purposeful, yes, that is the being, the individual, realising their own potential or learning skills, and I think that that's a really good thing. And perhaps, yes, you might be trapped systemically, but personally it's still a wonderful vocation to have work with many students with very serious disabilities.
You can use colour, light, sound in your classroom. It doesn't, the curriculum doesn't say you can't. You can put colours on the wall and different lights for moods, and different sounds and substance. You know, Aboriginal sounds are fantastic. They're very subsonic. Sounds very important for learning.
Feel your mind opening, you know, and you think, oh yes, I remember that's what I thought about Julianne.
Okay, we've still got 15 minutes. Have you got anything you'd like to say or further? Anybody got any questions?
It always happens to me at BERA how clever the programming is. How they sort of create that sort of space between the two papers. And I mean, that's certainly a nice juxtaposition. And that image that you have of the nurses in China, that is such a powerful rendition.
Absolutely.
It really
It
is.
stuns me.
And
Florence Nightingale, she drives me
yeah,
nuts.
and the parallel, the parallel with the sort of the welfare sort of traditions is just so striking. And if you, a semiotic analysis alone of that single image is just so productive.
I went to a new hospital in Vietnam, brand new hospital, School of Nursing in Vietnam, run by doctors, going back to the 1950s or 60s. And guess what's outside the school? Bloody Florence Nightingale sat there. And here we go again.
Can I just take, I'm really curious about this.
You're curious, Jack?
Yeah, I am. This notion of semiotic analysis, okay? So when you say it's really interesting, the semiotic analysis, if I take a recent publication, this is from San Diego University, a guy called Noriyuki Inui, and he's arguing about bringing East Asian epistemologies into the Western epistemologies, because he deals about 6 East Asian notions, one of which is the Chinese notion of qi with the notion of energy. And I'm just really fascinated. So when you take about the semiotics, which is actually a Western construct, now if you take how Jikan, I think, was communicating to us through his body, it's sort of like Merleau-Ponty, the sense of embodiment, whether, you know, even the notion of a semiotic analysis somehow is a colonizing notion. You know, I'm asking whether or not we've got to almost get into that cultural space which we almost hold in abeyance, our Western cultural, and I've had a very rigorous academic training, but when I was in China and also Japan, I became very aware that there was a very different embodied expression of meaning. And I think Jikan, I think we'll have on the video today, some of those moments where Jikan, as you said, the authenticity of the values and the meaning. But I'm just curious, even when you said the semiotic analysis, whether, you know...
But do you not think, Paul, that...
Training as an art historian, sorry.
Go on, sorry.
Training as an art historian.
Yeah.
But I think that there's there are many ways that you can read this presentation, and we can take it into the materiality. We can take it into this, Sarah Prink's sort of sensory work. I mean, and that's just part of the wonderment. And I guess that's also was the base is sort of the backbone of our argument, is that so much of the research that goes on gets done to people rather than lives within, and that tradition just persists and persists and persists. And what you can get by working in these spaces, because my sort of main area of work is in art space pedagogy, And that's, that we've found very successful also with working with graduating teachers, is to be able to put them into a very different sort of space around these questions of knowledge.
BERA is a different space. I mean, I come from Australia, not from Australia, I come from Japan, you come from Australia, and sometimes when I first came 10 odd years ago and I had no audience, I was so upset. I was so angry, and I've come all this way and spent all this money, and there's bloody no one here to listen how great I am. Now I realise that the preparation and the focus of getting a BERA paper together for presentation today is what it's all about. And then when you actually get into this space, there's nowhere else that you can get this. You can take a risk in this space. If I went to one nursing, which I did, go to nursing conferences, and I do this, I'm sometimes booed, sometimes cat, well, that's not research, get out of here. You on drugs or what, eh? So this BERA space is unique in as much as that we can take a risk and not suffer too much on a professional level.
I suppose I was going to sort of come back to the point that you were making there, which is, I think it's very, very difficult to stand outside your own frame of reference. Your understanding of world is framed by your own experiences, and it's very, very difficult to step outside of that. And sometimes it takes having to go to a different culture to recognise that you're taking for granted way of looking at things is actually a taken for granted way of looking at things, and it can be very, very difficult to do that.
Well, I was very impressed with Elliot Eisner when you talked about art. His presidential address in '93, it was brilliant, and he was arguing for bringing these very new forms of representation into educational research and getting basically new standards of judgment legitimated in the academy. Now that's what Kan did with his doctorate. He actually brought the sense of a safe healing space with a kind of multimedia communication, which got very close to what I think we've seen today with the dying. And so I think that, when you say about art historian, that's where I think Elliot Eisner has made a tremendous contribution.
In a previous presentation before, a lady mentioned a phrase which for me has been the making of BERA for me, because she said about living in a foreigner's bubble, and I thought, wow, how amazing, because no matter what I do, I'm a foreigner, so I live in my foreigner's bubble, in Japan, in China, in Vietnam, and even though I try to remove my bubble, people won't let me. And that's the sad thing. They want you to be in your bubble and stay inside your bubble. So this is where in England they say the educator's gone native. He's gone outside the bubble.
But that's an issue that negotiation itself, isn't it? It's very much so.
But
tells us some of the cultures as well.
Yeah. Because one of the issues that I'm very concerned about is, and I didn't mention it, I should have done it, it's just come to me. I work in Dubai in health education, and the Sultan over there is a pretty wise guy. He suddenly realised that the oil's running out, okay? And his nation is arrogant, spoiled, got all the top jobs, can't do them, so they employ the expatriates. So he's saying that he must have UAE nationals as educators, nurses, leaders, and that is a very, very difficult thing to do, to actually start off and make it. And it can't be done. We're colonising.
Haven't you gone beyond that,
Yes, we have.
with Mark's idea that he, I thought, did a beautiful doctorate on this notion of living citizenship.
Yeah.
Okay, now Kan hasn't even mentioned that he's done all this work with the First Nation groups in Canada. Now, if we looked at the Northern Australian territories with the Aboriginal groups, and there are the Wardaman groups there, are beginning to show from an Indigenous perspective the nature of their knowing. Now, it feels to me that you are exemplifying, if you like, that in the sense that Mark has been working on about this notion of a living global citizenship.
Yeah, but you have to make sure that you don't get stuck in nationalism.
Very much, yeah.
Because nationalism is the opposite side of, we're going to shut our doors, shut our boundaries, shut our thinking, shut everything, and that leads to terror.
But isn't it that your response fascinates me? Because I resonate with your response. And this notion of compassionately caring, it just feels that it carries what Mark carried when he met the black youngsters round Durban. And I still remember your both sadness and anger that this 16-year-old could not go into higher education because his parents couldn't afford it.
Well, to be honest, that's why I'm sitting in this room, because I was never intended to be an academic. My work came about because of compassionate caring, because I was a deputy head, kids standing outside my door day in, day out, and I wasn't prepared to do nothing. I wasn't prepared to continually exclude them from school, send their parents, and it was compassionate caring that actually took me down this route, that made me do my PhD, and made me ultimately come. I wouldn't be sitting here if I hadn't empathised with those children, and that was back to my days a long time ago, even when I was trained, before I trained as a teacher, when I worked in a children's home, and I worked with disadvantaged children, and I just sort of felt myself reaching out to them. And I'm not saying I'm a goody two-shoes, I'm not, I'm sure I've got a lot of things wrong, but it was that sense of reaching out to children and wanting to, that actually led me into academia in the first place, because I was heading towards headship. That's why I've got two hats. I was doing well. I train head teachers, and I'd like to think that the most fundamental thing that I do in training head teachers is about values. It's the most important thing that I do with them, because they are ultimately the leaders, and that's the most important thing that I get across to them. It's the integrity, it's the transparency, it's about values, and that's the most important thing that I teach.
Everybody said something except this young lady in front of us here about today. Come on, talk to us. It's your only chance you're going to get.
I'm saying that as you, because I'm looking about leadership in inclusive education. So, and I know that how it's going to influence the whole inclusive thing. And as you said, all start from caring and compassion. So this is why I'm really in front of that, and I can see my own study in front of you. So
I would be very sad if we leave today or leave BERA without some form of networking between us. If we've got like-minded people in the space where we have started a conversation like this, that we don't keep up that momentum, because we are citizens, global citizens, and it is down to us and our practice and our action. And you say we under-report our praxis. We don't, practitioners, I'm a practitioner, you're a practitioner, we're talking as practitioners, and we don't do it enough. So I hope that if we can, would you agree to giving us your emails to Jack or Myra? Can you collect emails and we can keep in touch with people?
I think that would be great.
Sorry?
That would be very good.
Good.
Jack likes to sort of tell us.
Yeah, would you mind then if we just pass it round? I've got marks.
So, in the last few minutes, just to recap in the position of chair, our first lecturer, damn jolly good show. Take care. Have a nice conference.
It's going round now, so we're getting the emails, okay? That's great, thanks.